Hello, my name is Kate Fries, and I'm here to help answer a question that philosophers have spent many years attempting to answer. Now, the idea that culture defines us is one that we can trace back to the beginning of the human race. One example, a great example, of the idea that culture defines us is in the novel by Bernard Cornwell titled The Last Kingdom. Now, before we dive into this novel, and I attempt to show you how culture defines us sometimes, but not always, I'll give you a brief history about the time period in which The Last Kingdom takes place. Alright, so the novel takes place during the Anglo-Saxon time period in England. So basically, the Anglo-Saxon time period, it lasted around 600 years from 410 AD to 1066 AD, right? So this time period, it was kind of a weird time. They never really had one ruler, if that makes sense. They were in kind of tribal groups until they eventually got compressed into 4 kingdoms called Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex, right? So they never really had one true ruler once they came over to England. Now the Saxons, basically how it went was they came over to England, or Britain, however you want to call it. They're the same thing, it's the same place. Basically they came over, they attacked Britain after the Romans left because they knew that the British, or the English, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves. So the Saxons jumped on the opportunity to take this land where they were coming from, like Germany, you know, up north there. It's cold. They wanted to go to Britain where the climate's a little bit better, if that kind of makes sense. Alright, so all of these political customs, everything kind of changed when this one guy named Eric Bloodaxe, he was a Viking lord, comes over and decides to attack Britain, right? And the only kingdom that's left standing at the end is Wessex. Now Wessex is the strongest kingdom, you know, so obviously they're the ones that are left standing. And in the year 954, they managed to kill Eric Bloodaxe in battle. And England is united under one king named Edward. Now the Anglo-Saxons ruling came to an end after this guy named Edward the Confessor, it's a cool name by the way, who had no heir, died in 1066. Edward had supposedly willed his kingdom to William of Normandy, but preferred Harold Godwinson as his successor. Now Godwinson was crowned king immediately after Edward's death, but William of Normandy, Normandy, France, D-Day, all that stuff, decides to attack the kingdom, and he defeats Harold in the Battle of Hastings in October of 1066 and claims what's rightfully his, which is England. So basically, these political customs, especially in the early Anglo-Saxons time period, was great because these tribes, they were able to kind of make their own way of life by choosing their own leaders. And they were able to make their own cultures so that their culture didn't necessarily define them, but they defined their culture. Which is a beautiful thing that, you know, countries all around try to do, especially here in the United States. Whereas we have our states, and these states choose who's in charge, they're able to kind of choose the way that they want to be by making their own state laws, but still be under one sovereign government. Alright, that's enough about the time period for now. You guys kind of get the gist of it, right? So now we're going to talk about the real reason why you're all watching this. That's because of this book by Bernard Cornwell titled The Last Kingdom. Now, this novel, it's wonderful. You can see my copy's actually a little battered up because of how many times I've read it. Now, one of my personal favorite part, like something I think is kind of cool that a lot of people aren't going to talk about, is if you look right here, it won't really focus in there, but there's a quote on there by George R.R. Martin, author of Game of Thrones, who says, quote, "Bernard Cornwell does the best battle scenes of any writer I've ever read, past or present," end quote. And that's something I gotta agree with. You know, the battle scenes in this book are just remarkable. The entire book itself is remarkably written. Like, props to Bernard Cornwell for this book. It's wonderful. It's actually a whole series. You know, some people don't know that. It's the first book in a long series of novels that are kind of like the same story, following, you know, the same storyline. Alright, so the story of this novel starts in the kingdom of Bebbanburg in Northumbria. It's attacked by Danish Vikings, and the main character, Uhtred, whose name was changed to Uhtred after his older brother died, because that's kind of how they did it back then. He was captured by the Danes after his father's army was defeated in battle. Now, after that battle, Uhtred is living with a Danish warrior named Ragnar, who actually is the one who killed his older brother and killed his father. Right? And Uhtred's uncle, Elfric, takes Bedenberg and the title of Ealdorman for himself, even though Uhtred is the rightful heir. Now, when Uhtred is taken back to Bedenberg by the Danes in an attempt to barter for him, because, the Danes, they have this guy, they just want the land. They don't really care about Uhtred, they could care less. Elfric says that Uhtred has become worthless because he's more Dane than he is English now. Now, this is a huge thing because Uhtred, he wasn't forced to act this way. He becomes more Danish as he spends more time with these people, with these Vikings, these warriors. He takes up their style of life, everything that they do. He wants to be a Dane, not an Englishman. And it's something that's really cool because he chooses what he wants to define him. He doesn't let his culture, his family's past define him. He takes his own route. The way he gets there is a little weird, but he gets to choose his own path. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's something that Bernard Cornwell does really well in helping answer the question that does our culture define us? And sometimes it does. But sometimes we define our culture. We choose the culture that we want to define us. And that's one of the beautiful things about humanity, is we have the right to choose. We can do whatever we want with our lives. And it's a wonderful thing. So ultimately, Uhtred, now later on in the book, he shows us again how he doesn't let his cultures define him. He defines his cultures, and he changes to be the man that he wants to be. So alright, so once again, my name's Cade Freeze. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it kind of helped give you the insight on the question, does culture define us? And I hope I was able to pull enough examples from the novel and from real life and from the time period to be able to help you answer that question for yourself. Let me know what you guys think about that philosophical question. Thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye.